Friday with Brady and Tammy here on KOHI. On Friday is presented by Preheim Computers. Contact Preheim today at preheim.com. The opinions expressed on this program, not necessarily those of KOHI, staff, management, or advertisers. Now, here's Brady and Tammy.
Morning, and thank you. We have a special guest host this morning. Thank you, Nancy, and welcome back. It's been a long time since you've been here.
It's been a long time. I think maybe I might have forgotten how to do this, but we'll see what happens. Thank you for inviting me, and just delighted to have one of our original guest interviews, the guys who have a home in Northwest Portland. Paul and Rich Scappose is with us here. However, he's minus his partner, Rich. So welcome, Paul, and can you tell us how come you're here without your partner?
Well, good morning to both of you, and thanks for having me back. And so today, I guess we'll call it Hotel Guy. I am home solo. I had some business to take care of here at our home base. We still do maintain 1 foot in North America, but I left my husband and partner, Rich, in Thailand and told him there was no need for him to come back because I could do what needed to be done by myself, leave him on the beach in the warmer weather.
So maybe we should back up a little and start with how you came to be the Hotel Guys.
Well, yeah, how did we come to be? Well, the short story is that we have been on 8 world excursions since 2016, varying in length from 3 or 6 or 9, and sometimes the entire year of traveling, back-to-back years sometimes, with very brief visits home. In the early years, we would come back for the summers, and the impetus was that from the moment that we met each other 17 years ago, we were still working, both of us, with jobs here in Oregon, but we would love to travel. So we would travel. Sometimes I traveled for business and would take him with me. Those were business trips, of course. And we really yearned to, we, like a lot of people, yearned to stop working and had an interest in adding some, checking things off our bucket list. So that's what we started to do, is to just check stuff off our bucket list.
So you first came on our show way back in November 18.
Wow.
It's hard to believe.
Yeah, we had been on a couple of long winter trips. That was what started it, was why don't we find a place? We love summer weather. So we found places and would go away for the summer and for the winter and then come back for the summer. So yeah, that's when we've been at it ever since Rich and I were here last time, Brady.
Yeah. And then you had a second time you were here in May of 2019.
By that time, I know I'm remembering, by that time we had, one of the biggest early trips that we took was kind of, I guess you could call it a grand tour of Southeast Asia, with plans to visit Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam in the region for a total of 3.5 months. At the end or mid-March or so, we ended up adding 3 weeks in Myanmar, Burma. And so that was our first big trip, was to Southeast Asia. And I'm sure we're on your show talking about, and then the subsequent year, we went to India for 6 months. Thought we better try out India before we got too much older, only because we'd heard things about traveling in India could be a little more challenging. Well, we've been back to India 3 times since then. We're getting older. We still can do it, and we've learned a few tricks about how to make our travel a little bit easier.
Well, and I think it's very interesting that you have probably spent more time in Asia, Southeast Asia, than any other places, which I think is, the opposite of what you think the American tourist is really going to be interested in, and just interested in what draws you there.
Well, it's a couple of things right off the bat come to mind. The first is that English language is a very easy lubricator. You can use it everywhere. There will be some places where you will whip out our Google Translate, which also makes things very easy these days. The other thing is overall affordability. We've been to more expensive places to travel, like, in Europe, it's a little bit more expensive, and certainly traveling in North America is a lot more expensive. But Asia is affordable. It's easy to move around. Air travel between the regions are straightforward. They're relatively short flights. And so our playground very often has been, but not exclusively, because we have spent some pointed trips elsewhere, but our playground has been sort of, I describe it as from Japan to India and all the points that are in between. We haven't been to every one of those. We haven't even been to all the countries. There's a few that we haven't touched down in, but we have traveled. We did a winter this time last year. We were in South America. That was a first-time visit, and we spent, I forget how many months, 3 or 4 months there. And so we're just nomadically traveling around the countries. How long can Americans stay in a certain place? Do we need a visa? And we just plan what we want to do when we get there, taking into consideration that we're not spring chickens. We are both retired in 70s here, and so away we go.
So you do have a website, which is hotelguys.com, correct?
Yes.
And on that, you actually do have some detailed notes about where you've been, the hotels that you stayed in, your experiences there, so that you can go there and sort of follow you along. And I think you have quite a few videos and photos and so forth on that site as well, if people want to follow you after this show.
Right. Hotelguys.com was an idea that we had from the very beginning to share. I'm really more of an introvert, but Rich is the extrovert and insisted that we sort of document our trips, and it's become kind of a place for us to, it's actually kind of our brain. It's our reminder entry about when we were in certain places and where we actually stayed. A lot of countries that we visited a second time. This is also a way for us to keep track of the different visits that we've made. We were just in Vietnam for a couple of weeks. And so we would be able to distinguish our first trip from our second. But I want to really emphasize that unlike other people who are, I guess you would say, social media influencers, we aren't doing this for any kind of remuneration. We don't do anything commercial with our site. We don't have affiliate links. We're not trying to attract eyeballs to translate into dollars or, in some instances, cents.
So it doesn't make you any money?
No, it doesn't make us any money. We're not interested in that. We thought this would be a way for us to share our enthusiasm about the world and share our own interests, which include archaeological sort of investigations and other things. And so it's a way for our friends and family to know where we are. We keep even our itinerary on there if my family wants to know, or Rich's kids or family want to know where we are. So yeah, it's all there, and I blog a little bit. Rich takes care of our Instagram account. You can find us on Instagram at Hotel Guys 1, the Hotel Guys, the number 1. We're on Facebook at Global Hotel Guys, and we do have a YouTube channel also on Global Hotel Guys.
I mean, nowadays you could actually be making money off that. People would probably pay you to come and stay in a hotel.
They might. It's funny, even though I cut some of my professional teeth in the early internet period in the Bay Area, I'm just not interested in monetizing it. I just find it, for me, and for Rich, he didn't care. He just wanted to be able to talk to people, and we make friends all over the world, and those are the things that matter more to us. We don't really, I guess we don't need the money. We don't really want to work at it so hard in order for it to start to sort of what we would be the tail and the dog wag, you know what I mean? It would just start
become a job.
It would just start to control us a little bit and become a little bit too much.
Well, I think for me, you kind of hit on what I find fascinating is you're really all about the people. I mean, I've never seen two guys or two anybody's work so easily make friends wherever they go. I mean, you guys, you're just walking through a park and all of a sudden you make friends for life with people. And that's what makes it so interesting for those of us who haven't had these experiences, to what is the culture and what is the thinking in these countries that you're visiting. And in particular, because Brady and I are both very politically oriented, I think we're curious to know how are you received as Americans in these places that you visit? What's the overall vibe?
I've been traveling. My very first trip out of the country was when I was in college, in a summer trip to Europe. And, ever since then, and still for all that period of time, Americans that travel know that we possess a platinum travel entree to the world. We've got one of the most premier passports automatically in my instance, and Rich's, by our birth, just happened to be in the U.S. And so we are received so warmly, and America around the world, the United States of America, is still thought of with such high regard. It's the place where dreams kind of come true still. And, a lot of people have made that dream come true, and people around the world know of people or either firsthand, secondhand, or thirdhand. We have successfully sold a worldview that is lofty and complicated all in the same breath. And so how we are received is like princes, Nancy.
Wow.
Basically. Wow. And largely, of course, that's kind of the way we, and it, with us, it feels like it's a responsibility. Like we have to represent. We represent a lot of different things about ourselves, among them our nationality. And so we're we're humbled by the way that people react to us as traveling Americans. Largely, they're very interested in our lives, and it's a great, it's a two-way conversation, because like you say, we could just be home retired happily and cultivate a lot of interest and even maybe approach our travel a different way, but we throw everything that we own in one suitcase each, and we just hit the road. And there's a vulnerability about that really makes for some wonderful personal interactions. And then, of course, Rich has long blonde hair, so we do have friends all over the world, and have maintained a lot of those friendships. Some of them come and go, But we really, instead of just giving the house key to the neighbor next door or knowing the people at the market down the street, which we may do both of those things too, we just have a long, at this point in our lives, we're keeping it, fresh and continuing to make new friends where we go and listen and try to be listeners too. And learn so much, get out of our own American cultural mindset. We don't leave that behind, of course, but we can learn so much from the rest of the world, and we try to.
Has the attitude towards you as an American changed after Donald Trump, for the negative or the positive? Because I mean, we have heard, at least that's our perception, is that the reputation of the United States is bad. And during the 4 years that Trump was here the first time, and now here we are getting ready to have him again in office.
Yeah.
And, and now he's trying to buy Greenland and turn Canada into a state. And, those kinds of viewpoints seem inconsistent with people wanting to like America.
So interesting. Okay, so when we were first traveling after that election, we thought that we might be a little bit going on what we were referring to as an apology tour, and we weren't. It was interesting. We also are of a liberal bent, but I personally try. Rich maybe could have a different answer, but I would rather not lead with a very angular political position. I would rather, I would say the people, like even just in this last election. So yeah, between the 2016 period and even the current, it surprised me the degree to which people were so many people were so aware of the very specific goings on governmental processes. What we do still affects so much of the world. I mean, we've got the reserve currency. We're the ones that print the money. Everybody wants our money. And so there's a keen interest that translates, that economic interest translates politically. And people are very aware. They knew everything that was going on around the last election. And then speaking more partisanly, I would say that there was a very small percentage of people that we saw in the last go-round that were out of the box pro-Trump. People were, and that may have been after 4 years of, I don't know, chaos at some level, as experienced abroad too. I mean, we lived it, but so, I am a innately optimistic person, and while I'm like a lot of liberals right now, I have really turned off the flow of news information for my own sort of mental health. I'm intending to take a very optimistic. I'm not thinking I'm on the second apology tour. The name of our next tour is the Synergy Tour. We name every tour. And synergy now, I'm just looking for connections. I'm not I'm looking for like a middle ground and a connection. I may still have very strongly held beliefs about certain things, but yeah, those are some thoughts. I mean, it's kind of a complicated.
So, Paul, you mentioned that some people are really intricately informed about our political process. How do they get their information? Do they talk about on their in the media? Is that where they're getting it, from their local media?
Well, I would say that the countries vary quite a bit. Some countries have, everybody's like national broadcasting network or networks, very central in people's information gathering lives. And then there are other countries where, like ours, it's a very fractal kind of like create your own algorithm and draw towards you what it is that you draw yourself toward. I mean, it sort of becomes like this self-fulfilling thing. So it really varies, but it does seem like a lot of people, national broadcasts cover American elections.
Interesting.
And so do you find people wanting your opinion about the American political situation, and how do you handle that?
Well, okay, so I was being magnanimous and even-handed before. When the conversations gets to that point, then I express wholeheartedly my opinion about any particular political figure. But I also respect if they have a different idea, if they have a diametrically opposed view. I'm not trying to argue with anybody. I tend to, that's how I handle. Is it a little circumspect? I mean, just a little carefully initially, and then, Rich lets it rip, basically. I mean, and I will.
Yes,
I
he would.
will. Yes, of course he does. But I will take my cues a little more carefully. And sometimes I don't want to just talk about, it becomes this thing where we talk about us. It's like, I want to talk about them too. I want to talk about their political situation. We arrived in Argentina at the moment of the new Trump-ish president last year. And, we were interested to learn about them too. So, it's a 50-50. That's important to me.
Yes, and I was just going to ask you, have you been in a country that you thought, wow, I wish our system worked more like this one?
Wow, that's really interesting because, a lot of the countries in Asia, and the two that come to mind are Malaysia and Thailand, are, they've got pretty authoritarian governments. And, their infrastructure, of course, they're smaller countries, comparing it to a country like ours is impossible, really. But they have a different motivation. There's more, I don't know if you want to say state planning, but they work. Those countries work. Their institutions seem to work. There have been a lot of strains on countries with COVID. We were traveling until the moment of the COVID shutdown effectively, and then we were home for 2 years, 1.5, and then traveling again. And we saw such hardship encountered in places in the world following COVID that.
Just from the disease or from economic?
Yeah, it seemed like it was more economic, I guess, to your point, Nancy, earlier, but also the disease. I mean, when we would talk about, we would get to the next level and it would be like, yeah, a lot of people around here died, but they've kind of, they've moved on, and what reverberates are the economic, reverberations. I mean, the inflation that we've seen in the, Western world and our own country, other countries it's a global economy. So the higher cost for natural resources, for example, is borne by every country.
So do you find that other countries are having worse inflation than we do overall?
That's hard for us to see. I know when we were in Argentina, the inflation rate was exorbitant, and I know, Nancy and I have talked about that in another place before. I mean, I want to say, 80%, 40% inflation, which is really hard to get your head around. That's an outlier. And even then, we're in the country a month, or very often 3 or 4 weeks, usually at a time in one country. And then we move on. So sometimes it's a little hard to see it at the way we do here. We live it every day. What percentage is our electric bill going up? How much more is there the shrinkflation that we're seeing at the grocery store? It's easier to see that when we're home and living a day to day. When we're traveling, our dollar is so strong against local currencies relatively, usually, it can be a little hard to ascertain that.
And do most places, will they take U.S. dollars, or do you have to convert the currency? Or do most countries, are they happy to take a U.S. dollar?
Well, it really varies from country to country. Some countries are like cashless. In Malaysia, for example, there's a lot of street food, which of course is what's well known about Malaysia. The food's amazing. The people are amazing. The country actually of Malaysia is amazing. We're going back. But it's like a cashless society. On the street food, the food cart stalls, you even pay with your card. In other places, in that instance, you'd have to have local currency. We always exchange currency when we arrive in a country. We always have some local currency in our wallet. But, our American-based Visa MasterCard is a very handy tool. And those credit cards are used, are taken all over the world. There's some places that don't take them and you have to have cash. Those are a lot more rare these days.
Interesting. Okay, well, we have our first break already, an only break, so we'll be back in just a moment.
Help the Arbor Day Foundation plant more trees across the nation. Plant a tree today for all the world to share. You can make the air taste fresher, breathe as deeply as you please. You create a world of pleasure just by simply planting trees. And each day creating beauty is just part of what they're worth. You make the world a better place with trees, protecting the good earth. Help the Arbor Day Foundation plant more trees across the nation. Plant a tree today for all the world to share. Plant a tree today for all the world to share.
This is Crystal Gale. Plant trees. For more information, go to arborday.org. You'll make a world of difference.
You are not authorized to access this facility.
Having a problem with your desktop, laptop, or tablet top?
Warning. Self-destruct sequence has been initiated. Warp core overload in 7 minutes.
It's never too late to call Brady at Preheim.com, 503-543-4884, or email Brady on the web at Brady@Preheim.com. Serving Columbia County for over 24 years. Desktops, laptop, tablet top, cell phone top, and Brady makes house calls and business calls. So don't put up with a slow or no computer. Give Brady a call now, 503-543-4884 at Preheim.com.
Brady is the only guy I know with a cardboard cutout of Mr. Spock behind his desk.
So I just, ask you a little bit of a follow-up about how you're perceived. Has there been a time where you felt your safety was threatened because you were, like you were going to pretend to not be American? Like, I'll pretend like I'm from Great Britain or something?
No, there really hasn't been. We don't move around the world that way. We have stepped off trains at night in India, in the first class car, and been surrounded by, I think of them as young small businessmen that are looking for somebody to work with for a couple of days, maybe drive them around and show them the sights. And we've sometimes engaged in those situations and been driven all the night in a tuk-tuk with our suitcases, and never have felt, I want to say not once have we ever worried about that.
Really? Interesting.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and I would, if you don't mind, I would like to bring up the question of what it's like to be two gay men traveling in these countries, which I'm sure some of them, I shouldn't say I'm sure. I'm assuming there is some resistance to that type of relationship.
Well, I think that much like the safety question, I would say that that the way we handle and carry ourselves goes a long way in how we're going to be perceived. So, the gay part of gay men always comes first, but it can be the two men that happen to be gay, and so it can be sort of at the end. And so we don't lead with that. That's certainly a big, important part of our identity, but that is not, we're not getting off that train that I made reference to with the gay freedom flag or anything. So it sometimes comes up, sometimes appropriate. In my experience, sometimes if we lead with it too soon, it can be all consuming in the conversation, which of course we're willing to have, but that's not always to our benefit in the sense of that, remember, we're trying to learn about them too. And so we will be a little, just read every situation. And so that also doesn't feel like it stops us. We have traveled to countries where an open expression of our sexual identity would not necessarily be welcome. And that hasn't stopped a lot of gay people from traveling. And so certainly doesn't stop us.
That's really interesting. I would assume it's come a long way in people's perception of relationships, and that's a really positive thing.
It actually has come a long way. It certainly has come a long way in the United States and in many other places in the Western world. The countries of Taiwan and there's another one. Is it Taiwan? So even in places in Asia, they're recognizing marriage of same-sex couples and relationships of same-sex couples. And so it's slowly changing in a lot of different places.
Interesting.
Yes, and you make friends so easily that I think it's, I've always thought the two of you are such wonderful goodwill ambassadors. And because of your relationship, it just broadens that, because you're giving such a positive view of an open relationship that in many countries, I assume, is still hidden.
I think that's accurate. I think that sometimes it's a very refreshing thing for people, and it could be closeted gay people, men and women that we meet along the way too, that see us and, I don't want to say role model, but we can model just what being a good person in the world is. And of course that incorporates a lot of things.
Well, and I know that you have you've created a relationship with someone, a young man that you have actually never met. And I think that would be a really interesting story for people to hear. Do you want to tell us more about your friend?
Yes, I will. I know I mentioned this to you before we got on the call. We have a friend that we made, that actually I made. I guess once upon a time, I was reading the New York Times during COVID in 2021, and it was the fall of 21, and I was reading about the assassination of a community organizer in southern Bangladesh in a refugee camp of displaced Rohingya Muslim citizens, over about 1 million of them, plus or minus. And the man's name that was assassinated was Mohib Ullah. And he was, like I say, an organizer of human rights of the Rohingya Muslim minority. This is a ethnic minority that resided in the northern stretches of Myanmar, Burma. And I was aware of the strife, the social and civil strife in Myanmar. We've been to Myanmar twice. Our first trip was in the March-April of 2017 timeframe. That was, I was mentioning before about our trip to Southeast Asia. Myanmar wasn't initially on our itinerary, and we added it. And we went back in February of 20 for about 10 days. So we'd been there twice, and we're just enthralled. It's a Buddhist minority country with a lot of really unique ethnic minorities sort of here and there around a very diverse, of course, initially British colony that became a country after World War II. So it's a very complicated place. And the Rohingya Muslim in the north is a minority population. This Muslim minority only represents about 4% of the population. And I sent a note to the organization's Facebook website when I read about the assassination, because I just thought it was such a terrible thing. I'd actually never done anything like that before. Didn't expect any response. Didn't ask anything. It's just saying, we support you and we read this, and I'm, sorry that this happened. And this was a good guy who was gunned down by the bad guys, basically. And these are organized criminal gangs, some of them from internal within Myanmar, some of it, I'll say, Chinese criminal gang activity that just did not want to see the kind of organizing that this young guy was doing. So months went by, and I got a response from a guy, and I cultivated a pen pal, if you will, relationship with him over the years. And his name is Alom, and he fled in August of 2017 when he was 15 years old. His village, his remote village in northern Myanmar. He fled over the border to southern Bangladesh and joined 1 million people in pretty dire UN-sponsored and maintained refugee camp in southern Bangladesh in an area called Cox's Bazar, which is a very there's a lot of regular Bangladesh life that is in this area. They have established this very large not concentration camp, although it feels like that. I hope I didn't say that earlier. But it's a very subsistence life that he lives. And so, in the same way that we can encourage people that we meet along the way, I've just cultivated this friendship, and Rich has too, to be a voice of just from the outside that just cares. People do leave the camp and they emigrate to different places, and the UN has programs that try to help them, but their health care is not good, their diet is not good, their living situation is not good. And
they're like in tents, right? I mean,
sorry.
There's not housing. They're like living in tents.
Yes. And, I'll periodically learn from alum that as there was just a few days ago, landslides, because of course where the camps go that the UN sets up is not probably the best regions, otherwise it would have already been settled. So they can be unstable geologically, or they might be prone to flooding. There also sometimes are devastating fires like we're seeing in Southern California right now that just sweep through these camps. And, people are in, tents that I can't know the dimensions. I imagine that it's, 20 by 20s kind of size tents. They're fairly concise for whole families. And so these fires will sweep through there, and sometimes there's loss of life. And because they're on propane, and so sometimes there's propane explosions, and life just is very challenging. And, my friend Alom actually just recently, a terrible tragedy, his father was shot by a gang who was recruiting Alom to come fight in the war. And because, it's a very long conversation, but what's going on in Myanmar, it goes on, it was a year after our second trip that the Civil War started, and the military junta took over from Aung San Suu Kyi, who everyone will remember was the elected, we think of her as president, they called her the state counselor, and she was beloved. And she was trying to gingerly balance, sometimes to the international community's dismay, to gingerly balance the situation there between, wrestling control from what's been a military dictatorship, and basically she lost. And following some religious strife in the north, this military junta went into the Rohingya areas and just indiscriminately started burning villages and shooting people. I mean, it's as bad as, it's a Holocaust. When people talk about the Holocaust, we should be asking ourselves which one, because we know there's lots. And so, yeah, that's the situation. And so I am going to visit. I'm planning to. I don't have actually the ticket yet, but I'm planning to peel off from Rich and do a quick solo trip to Bangladesh and go visit and meet my friend Alom for just a few days probably, and see for myself firsthand. And if you keep an eye on hotelguys.com, I'll be blogging about that experience.
And so you've had this pen pal relationship, but so far you've not actually ever met him.
No, I never have.
And I'm so struck.
We've been in touch for now going on 4 years.
Wow.
I'm so struck by the fact that this camp is in Bangladesh, because I think of Bangladesh already overburdened with suffering and incapable of meeting the needs of their own people. And now they have, how big did you say this camp is?
I've seen estimates of 800,000 to 1.1 million.
Wow.
Displaced Rohingya Muslim refugees living in squalor in the southern reaches of Bangladesh, a failed state whose president just fled, and they're searching for billions of dollars. Come on, stop it. I mean, between them and what's going on in Myanmar and many other places, these governments have got to do better for the people. They'll rise up someday and wrestle control back. They're starting to do that in Bangladesh. And, Alom is committed. He wants to go back to be in the minority and to get citizenship for his people who they have never recognized as citizens. This is something else that we just take for granted. That, okay, fine, we're born on the shores of Lake Erie like me in Ohio, and I can automatically just get a passport. He's born in a little village in that particular neck of the woods, and the country that he was in, established by Great Britain in 1948, will not give him a passport. He can't study, he can't leave, he can't do anything.
Well, we're going to have that here in about 10 days, too.
Oh, come on. We've got to be more optimistic than that. We've got to be. And the thing is, we won't take it. We won't take it in this country. We know how to organize. And
well, we have a constitution, so there's that. But
yes, exactly. And some of these countries have constitutions too, and the courts being the last resort will be, will the courts uphold the laws that have been passed? And in some of these countries, they don't always.
Well,
this is so hard.
How do they get food? It's like
right.
I mean, how do you? We like that. It's like, where do you get food? Where do you?
So the UN provides them with a daily ration that includes no meat, the vegetables that are available locally. It's not like the Red Cross. It's not like Red Cross stuff that comes in, or MREs or whatever. It's chattel.
It's subsistence living.
So, but this young man has taught him English. He's determined to be a community organizer in the spirit of Mohit Ullah. And I'm sorry, but we have to support that.
Yes. Oh, I just really am thrilled to think that you are going to go there, because what could be more encouraging to him and the people who will be exposed to you than to realize that we are willing to witness this. We are not only willing to witness it, we're willing to go there and witness it in person. And do any situation? No, not at the material situation, but you can change their whole perception of whether or not they have been forgotten. And wow, you just make me really want to follow along with this trip you're going to be on.
We can change one life.
Yes.
I can change one. I am changing one. We are changing. Rich and I are changing one.
Yes. And you're changing your own life at the same time.
Absolutely.
Wow. Is there an organized charity effort that you're aware of? Tell us about that.
On our website, the easiest way to convey to anybody listening that's interested is that on our website at hotelguys.com, in our navigation, there is a tag called Friends, and you'll see on there a pull down for Rohingya Muslim minority in Bangladesh and in Myanmar. That will give you, I borrowed some information from the United Nations High Council on Refugees, or whatever they call it. So there's some UN language about the Rohingya situation, and you can learn more, including a way to help. If you wanted to do that directly through the UN, I know there's a mechanism, and there's others too.
Wow. Yes. Thank you. I mean, these are the kind of things that are going on, and we're totally unaware of them because the media, of course, tires very quickly of one particular story. So how many years ago did he, you said he was 15 years old when he went to the camp. How old is he now?
Well, that would make him, 8 years older. So yeah, he's just in his mid-20s.
8 years.
Yeah.
And he managed to teach himself English. That's so impressive.
Well, we meet a lot of people who do that through their U.S. language media. Movies, especially movies, Hollywood movies still are leading culturally so much, but also, the new media, YouTube particularly, is a great way for young people with the motivation, the affinity to learn English.
Wow. Well, frankly, I could spend the next hour talking about this, but we have one other subject we'd really like to touch on because we think it's everybody, and that's medical care. And you in particular, Paul, because you just recently turned 65. So up until you were able to get on Medicare, you have for many years been getting medical care overseas. You are what's referred to as a medical tourist. Love to hear your take on that and your experiences.
Well, I made a bold decision that not everybody would make, and that was that I forewent buying private health insurance in these last few years before going on our much more affordable and much more accessible socialized care. And in lieu of that, I opted to stay out of the country most of the time. This is one of the motivating factors. And it worked because it was a push-pull to travel and just to see the world. But at the same time, I took my primary care abroad. And so I saw doctors annually and got tests primarily in northern Thailand in the city of Chiang Mai, very specifically at a private hospital, the Chiang Mai RAM Hospital, RAM Hospital. And they have wonderful outpatient medical checkup programs that I've used now 4 years in a row. Rich and I both just got good, clean bills of health, which of course helped everything else go smoothly. And they're very thorough, not quite day long, but half day long, are inclusive of things like 3 different cancer marker blood tests, GI, liver, and prostate. And then also, along with all the other usual blood work and the rest of all of that, as well as an abdominal sonography to make sure that anything that could be identified that way, cysts on for women, it could be ovaries because that's often an issue, or in our case, liver and a kidney. They're tracking certain things there as we grow older. And then also this last time we got something for the first time, bone mineral density MRI. And this was all part of the premium package, if you will, that they were pitching to us for $440 each. So we did that. And
well, thank you very much.
Yes, unfortunately, we have to go.
Hour goes fast.
My pleasure. Great to see you both.
Thank you.
Yes.
And thanks, Nancy.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that's our show today on Odd Friday with Brady Preheim and Tammy Magra. You can email the show at kohi.radio@gmail.com or brady@preheim.com. Listen on demand for our show at cleancolumbiacounty.info on the web. Thanks for listening today to Odd Friday.